Hello, I'm Stephen Rayner, and with me is Bill Belgard. And our special guest today is Debbie Collard. In 30 years with the Boeing Company, Debbie Collard served as an executive in multiple divisions encompassing business excellence, quality improvement, strategy integration, program management, and business operations. Debbie's work resulted in several quality awards, including the prestigious Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award, the highest honor for performance excellence given in the United States. She was instrumental to the transformation of the Boeing Airlift and Tankers program, which won the award for manufacturing in 1990. She then went on to become the key practitioner leading to Boeing's aerospace business, winning the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award in the service sector in 2004. Debbie served on the National Baldrige Foundation Board of Directors for 15 years, holding multiple positions, including becoming the first woman chair of the board. Today, Debbie is founder and owner of A Positive Difference, LLC, and Debbie Collard Executive Coaching and Leadership Development. Thank you very much for joining us, Debbie.
Thank you, Steve. I'm glad to be here with you.
Debbie, the world faces multiple challenges today. We look at issues like clean water and sanitation, affordable energy, mass migration, climate change. We have a health crisis going on right now with the coronavirus. When you look at the aerospace and defense sector, where you've spent your entire career, do you see a role that particular sector could play in helping address some of these global challenges that may be a little different than how they've traditionally been involved, particularly given their unique technology capabilities, their development capabilities, their systems kind of thinking and being able to solve complex problems? Do you think there's a role for aerospace and defense companies in dealing with these challenges?
Yeah, Steve, first I'd like to say, I want to send my thoughts and prayers to everybody affected by COVID-19 pandemic. Many people, almost everybody now knows somebody at least twice removed that has been affected by this horrible pandemic and unprecedented situation we're in. And I've been so impressed with those who are stepping up and speaking and acting in ways that make a positive difference as we experience this. So first, I wanted to say that. To your question, yes, I do think that there could be a role for aerospace and defense industry in addressing these global challenges. In some ways, the industry inroads into helping address the challenges with things like clean fuel alternatives, lowering emissions, helping address climate change. But there's ever so much more to be done. The A&D industry is uniquely positioned to lead the way in significant change and improvements in some of the global challenges we face today. As you pointed out, they're used to dealing with complex systems and challenges, and they have incredible innovative knowledge and experience and capabilities to bring to bear to help in areas probably that we haven't even yet imagined.
When you sort of look at what might be holding the industry back, is there anything about the way that the government procurement process works, or just the general direction of leadership and the way they think about the industry that may be having a negative effect on their ability to become more engaged?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. I think what it's going to take is them really focusing on the challenges, because when they put their collective or individual power to solving a challenge, there's nothing they can't conquer. But they got to be motivated, get engaged in this. Something has to drive them to focus on the issues at hand. So, for example, with the recent pandemic, many were focused and put their energy towards solving some immediate issues and shortages, like personal protective equipment. But what made them do this? Well, they were motivated to do it by the collective focus of the world in this unprecedented pandemic. Thinking back before in history, when organizations and industries pivoted and came up with innovative approaches to things they hadn't done before. Think of World War II, when companies all across the United States had to start manufacturing aircraft and tanks and all the equipment needed for the war effort. And they had to have people to do it that hadn't previously been in the workforce. A lot of women went to work that were previously stay-at-home wives and mothers. So that, like this current pandemic, has driven these companies to think differently and act differently because of the challenges that are being faced and because of the collective public pressure on organizations to think about doing things differently. So it's an impetus for them to absolutely change the way they're doing things. But I think that getting them more engaged will require a few things. Capability, they already have this, they've got capability. Motivation and incentive, and this may need some focus, and then support to see it through. They can do this if they don't let the culture revert to a more comfortable place once the pandemic has passed. So all these innovative new things that they're doing, and they're finding out that they can use production lines for, and their engineers to focus on to help the global challenges, has the unfortunate opportunity to revert back to normal at some point. And that's what they can't let happen. But they've got to put things in place now to keep that from happening. You also mentioned the government contracting works and issues such as that. And that is a challenge. I don't think it's insurmountable. It just requires, just like with the way they think about things, it requires different partnerships and different ways of thinking about those partnerships so that it can be for producing things and solving problems for the greater good.
You bring up some of the extraordinary things that have happened during the coronavirus pandemic, and certainly we've seen aerospace companies really stepping up, and we have examples of Boeing and Airbus using 3D printing to make face shields. Rolls-Royce has been involved in helping make ventilators. We see apparel companies doing some really great stuff and making masks and PPE. Distilleries make hand sanitizer. I mean, there's a lot of cooperation, collaboration going on today to focus on this one crisis. And that's created a lot of positive energy in addressing the COVID issue. How do we capture that sort of energy and sort of broaden it to maybe deal with some other global challenges once this crisis, is over, once a vaccine, say, is out and longer in the COVID crisis? Is there a way we can channel that energy to address other issues, across industry? And your thoughts on how we might do that?
Yeah, Steve, I think that's absolutely possible. But we're going to have to keep pressure on and highlight the benefits of and positive outcomes that happen when we all work together towards a common purpose. We can't revert back to the way things have always been. There has to be what you've heard talked about all over, the new normal. And that new normal has got to include us thinking and acting differently. Includes how we collaborate and partner to accomplish things. We've seen wonderful things that can happen. You mentioned a number of them, and they can happen extremely quickly with turnarounds that before would have seemed unimaginable. No, that can't be done, and we certainly can't do it that quickly. But these positive transformations can arise from chaos and horrible situations. It requires organizations and people who are at the heart of organizations to be agile and adapt quickly to challenges with amazing responses. The examples you mentioned and other examples that are cropping up every single day. It requires leaders, courageous leaders from all walks of life who won't settle for, well, that's the way we've always done it here. And we tried that, but it didn't work. They won't settle for that. And they want to create change for the good of many and the good of this planet, the one planet that we all live on.
You've been an aerospace and defense insider for a number of years, and probably have some of the extraordinary technologies that exist that have been developed. Is there technology out there today that you think could be, that's already in a sense been paid for by the government funding, that's available that we could begin to immediately apply to address some of these global issues?
I'm sure that there is. I'm sure there's any number of things, and I don't even know about most of them. But that's kind of the way things happen, right? There's a number of roles that the A&D sector can play in this regard. If they'll partner with government and with foundations, like is starting to happen, and pass the red tape and restrictions of the past to come up with solutions that can be of global benefit. It can be done without compromising integrity or security, which has often been touted as, oh, we can't do that because of security or integrity of the system. But it's been proven that that can happen. A lot of things that are used in everyday life now, microwave oven, for example, were invented because of technologies made for government use. And they found out that there were other purposes full about that. Yeah, I think that there's a number of things that are probably applicable to the global challenge. It's challenged, sure, but we've had tougher challenges before. And the A&D sector has always been at the cutting edge of developing technology and products that have broad-based capability. It's just seeing what that applicability might be. We have to think differently. We have to act. So, I mean, look at what Elon Musk, for example, has accomplished with SpaceX. A few years ago, one dreamed that it would be possible to launch these capsules into space and then have the first stage land back on a moving platform on the ocean and be reused. No one dreamed that that was possible. Clearly he dreamed it was possible. And look how we feel about it now. Now we feel like, well, of course it's doable because we've seen someone do it. He took risks and he was comfortable with the uncertainty of innovation. He wanted to do something, he had a purpose, he found a way to. I think we need a lot more of that type of thinking and action, and this brave leadership that's willing to deal with innovation and uncertainty to break through to the applications that can help the globe, you know, to address all kinds of challenges like clean drinking water for so many countries that don't have it. And there's countless others.
Debbie, you've worked for your career in terms of quality and leadership practices. And today you run a very successful, after retiring for 30 years at Boeing, working in McDonnell Douglas, working for the company. You now run a very successful executive coaching and leadership development, executive leadership development business. And what do you think it's going to take on behalf of the executives that in these companies to be able to take some of their learnings, like the ability to make, to run the large scale supply chain processes that they run, things like that, and apply those skills, the processes, to these kinds of issues. And there's part of it is going to be technology, part of it is going to be processes in countries that are trying to implement this, and organizations that are trying to implement this. What would you tell executives about that?
I think a couple of things, Bill. First of all, I worked in strategy integration for a while, and if we look at typical strategies for any kind of a company, not just aerospace and defense companies, but the world that they typically work in with their strategies, even though they think they're being innovative and exploring transformative strategies, when you map those strategies out, what they're generally doing is exploiting their existing processes and strategies and capabilities and making them more efficient and taking out any waste. And that's got low uncertainty and low risk, right? But to do these transformative processes has higher risk and high uncertainty, and takes a lot of guts on the part of the leaders who are going out and doing that, like the Elon Musk example that I used. if we can apply that innovation thinking, or even the improving the processes that we already have thinking and applying them to some of the problems, it's got such capabilities. I work with a number of leaders, and as you pointed out, and what's amazing to me is the most basic concepts that you share with those leaders, and then they say, oh, well, I never quite thought of it that way. And these are not they are running multi-billion-dollar businesses, but having them think of things in a new way or approach something in a new way opens up all sorts of possibilities. So if we can take that concept and apply it to these problems, these global challenges, and help people see that by applying some of the things we've done for years in some of these companies to a new problem, it creates a whole new solution set. And it's getting the two together that I think is the biggest challenge, right? Getting these companies focused on, and that's why I said we got to think and act differently, getting them to focus on what these challenges are and apply their resources to helping fix those challenges.
Yeah, and there's likely going to need to be a big role for governments and foundations working with industry to get all together. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that, Steve. I think public-private partnerships are too few. I think there needs to be more of them. I think those can remove a lot of the government ingrained for years red tape that exists out there. And you can spend all day saying who's at fault for that government red tape existing, but it doesn't matter, it exists. And getting around that in a legal, ethical, moral way, which is capable with these different public-private partnerships, because the private sector can bring resources and approaches to bear and funding for those. And the government part can provide the oversight and partner with them to get the right groups paying attention and creating the right products and getting to the right places. And then that's when the magic can occur. This is a minor example and not necessarily totally relevant to the current situation, but the C-17 program, which I worked on for a number of years, in fact, was the first program I worked on with McDonnell Douglas. That aircraft is an airlifter aircraft, and it was designed to get in and out of undeveloped or underdeveloped locations. It has a quick takeoff and landing capabilities, so it can go into places that you wouldn't think an aircraft of that size can go into. And it has lots of capacity to carry things and drop off food pallets in underdeveloped areas, or fresh water, or help with a number of things. It's been used by the U.S. Air Force and the U.S. Air National Guard to go into different places where there's been earthquakes, or to do humanitarian missions. And that's a good example of the government using something that was made for one purpose for a completely different purpose that helps benefit these humanitarian missions around. And so more of that kind of thinking and using more processes and products in a way that they weren't maybe necessarily originally intended, but really helps out with challenges that we face today.
One of the things that we've been hearing in our interviews, and in fact, it was in one of our interviews, the point was actually made that it was a concern among CEOs, pretty common across the entire aerospace and defense sector, was recruitment and retention of folks. A lot of the younger generation is not as interested in aerospace and defense, and maybe preferring to enter other kinds of jobs and positions with companies in Silicon Valley, the best and brightest, or in something, in other areas, partly because of financial gain, partly because of the purpose of the company. The question really is, do you think that if aerospace and defense companies really took a role and were seen as leaders in addressing global challenges, do you think that could have a positive impact on their ability to get the best talent out there?
Well, in short, yes. But every industry and every company wants to attract talent. I mean, who doesn't want to attract the top talent, right? In a survey that I participated in last year, we surveyed CEOs of multiple organizations in varied industries, and they were unanimous in stating that one of the top challenges, top 5 certainly, but mostly top 2 challenges, was attracting and retaining talent. And I believe that the best talent of this younger generation and the ones that will follow will be more likely to seek careers in industries that they see putting resources towards addressing global challenges and truly walking the talk versus just talking about it or just posting it on a wall as part of their values. They're much more socially aware global citizens. And with the technology available today, the world's smaller than it's ever been. And these people are not going to stand for working for companies that don't share their values and don't support these global causes that they care so greatly about. So yes, I do think that if the A&D sector put more resources towards these types of things and walked the talk and supported it in addition to their other purposes and gave it equal weight, they're going to have no trouble attracting the top talent. It's going to be cool to work for that kind of a company.
So public-private partnership that could set up the organization and the funding to be able to actually work on these critical issues of climate change and potable water and those. And then with the recruiting, with the new hires, being able to go to work pretty quickly on those specific issues as well. And the technologies that they're working on get used there, or they're working directly on that program. I think what you're saying is that's a recipe for success for A&D.
Bill, absolutely, that's a recipe for success. And I'll add even something to that I didn't say before. When people join companies we're joining companies. When we join companies, we got to hear, well, you can work in this area for a while, and then maybe in 5 years you'll get promoted or a different job, and
Right.
you may get to eventually 10 years work on what you were hired to work on in the first place, and we're so excited about.
Right.
The people coming into the workforce today, that does not fly with them, no pun intended. They do not want to have to pay their dues and work at a certain amount of time in an area. They want to immediately be able to go in and put their energy and ideas to work on these things that they care about, the reason they hire into a company. And so if a company can code on that, of not only focusing on the things that are important to the people coming into the workforce today, but also giving them the opportunity to dive in and work on it right away and not have to pay their dues or go get coffee for the boss or any number of other things that the companies are making them do before they can really work on the good stuff. So I think that's going to make all the difference, because not only was attracting top talent important to the CEOs I interviewed, but also retaining that talent. They were finding that this talent would, when they did get them to come in, they would stay for 2 years and then they were out of there.
Right.
Because what they found was the reality didn't match what they had been promised in taking that job with that organization. So if companies can turn that around, in fact, I think they're going to have to turn it around if they want to retain that top talent, because otherwise that talent's going to find another place where they can work on what they want to work on and make a difference in the world. And I'll tell you, the life is good motto of love what you do what you love. These guys live it every day, and they won't stand for a company that doesn't allow them to do that.
And likely, if they left the A&D company to find that, what you were just describing there, that life that you're just describing, they probably wouldn't go to work for another A&D company to find it. They'd probably go somewhere else.
Right.
Right. So they'd be lost to A&D after that.
Absolutely. You know, back in the 80s and early 90s, we saw people jumping back and forth between different companies in the same sector
Right.
in order to get promotions, in order to make more money, to work on different things they wanted to work on. But as you just pointed out, that's not what happens now. Now they leave the industry altogether and go do something else than what they went to school for and were trained for, because and a lot of them are becoming entrepreneurs because they're saying, I can't find it in corporate America, what I want. So we got some changes to make, I think, in A&D sector, but in corporate America in general.
Right.
Debbie Collard, I want to thank you very much. Very insightful interview.
Thank you very much. In closing, I do want to say I'm very hopeful about the future, and the great things can be accomplished if we just focus on and work towards the same goals.
Thank you very much.